My wife secretly transferred our savings to her exec. She had no idea I'd cut her off completely. Looking back, the signs were there all along, but love has a funny way of blinding you to what's right in front of your face. I met Vanessa at a charity fundraiser 5 years ago. She stood across the room in a midnight blue dress, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders as she laughed at something someone said. There was something magnetic about her presence, the confidence in her stance, the intelligence in her eyes. I felt drawn to her before we'd even exchanged a single word. "You've been staring," my friend James whispered, nudging me forward. "Go talk to her, Adam. What's the worst that could happen?" The worst never crossed my mind then. How could it? Our courtship was a whirlwind. Vanessa was everything I dreamed of: ambitious, passionate, and fiercely independent. A management consultant at a prestigious firm, her career trajectory impressed everyone in our circle. When we married 2 years later, I couldn't believe my luck. Here was this extraordinary woman who loved me, who chose me as her partner in life. "I promise to always be honest with you," she had said during our vows, her eyes glimmering with tears. "To build a life of truth and trust with you." I believed every word. Our life together settled into a comfortable rhythm. I worked as a software engineer at a tech startup, putting in long hours but always making it home for dinner. Vanessa's schedule was more demanding. Her job required frequent travel. At least once a month she'd fly to Chicago for what she described as intensive client meetings. "It's exhausting," she'd say during our nightly video calls, her face illuminated by the harsh hotel lighting. "But the firm is considering me for partnership. These sacrifices will be worth it in the end, Adam. We're building our future." And we were. Every month we diligently transferred portions of our salaries into a joint savings account, the foundation for the house we planned to buy, for the children we hoped to have. The future stretched before us, bright with possibility. "I miss you," I'd text while she was away. "Miss you more," she'd respond. "Can't wait to be home." And when she did come home, she'd collapse into my arms, burying her face in my neck. "You have no idea how much I need this," she'd whisper. "How much I need you." I never questioned her dedication to me, to us, to our shared dreams. In fact, I admired her drive, while my friends complained about their partners' shopping habits or social media addictions. I boasted about Vanessa's work ethic. "She's going to run that company someday," I'd say proudly. The months passed in this familiar pattern. Vanessa would leave for Chicago with her sleek carry-on and portfolio, send me updates throughout her trip, and return home with tales of difficult clients and boardroom drama. Sometimes she brought me small gifts: specialty coffee from a local roaster, a book from an independent shop she'd discovered between meetings. It was during one such return that everything changed. It was a Wednesday evening in late October. I had picked Vanessa up from the airport, and she seemed particularly exhausted. Dark circles underlined her eyes, and she was quieter than usual on the drive home. "Rough trip?" I asked, reaching across the console to squeeze her hand. "The worst," she sighed. "This client is impossible to please. But let's not talk about it tonight. I just want a hot shower and to fall asleep next to you." At home, I insisted on unpacking her suitcase while she showered. It was a small gesture, one that had become part of our routine. I'd unpack, start a load of laundry, and have a glass of wine waiting for her when she emerged. As I emptied her jacket pockets before sending it to the dry cleaner, my fingers brushed against a piece of paper. Thinking it was just a receipt she'd need for her expense report, I pulled it out. At first glance, it looked like any other hotel receipt, the Chicago Lakefront Grand, dates matching her trip. But as my eyes scanned the document, details jumped out at me that didn't fit the narrative I knew. "Romantic lakeside suite," it read. "Package includes champagne service, couples massage, rose petal turndown." My heart stuttered in my chest. I read it again, certain I was misunderstanding. But there it was. Undeniable evidence of a room meant for two, not the standard business accommodation her company would book. The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam. Vanessa emerged wrapped in her robe, her hair turbaned in a towel. She smiled at me, that same smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. "You're too good to me," she said, noticing the unpacked suitcase. I quickly slipped the receipt into my pocket, my mind racing. "Just taking care of my wife," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. She crossed the room and kissed me softly. I'm so lucky to have you. That night, as Vanessa slept soundly beside me, I stared at the ceiling, the receipt burning a hole in my nightstand drawer where I'd hidden it. Questions circled my mind like vultures. Who had she been with? Was this the first time? How long had she been lying to me? I wanted to wake her, to demand answers, to shake the truth out of the woman I'd built my life around. But a cold, calculating part of me, a part I didn't know existed until that moment, whispered to wait, to watch, to gather more evidence before confronting the perfect lie our marriage had become. Because that receipt wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the first crack in an illusion. The first sign that the life I thought we were building together might be nothing more than a carefully constructed house of cards. And I needed to know just how far it would fall when the truth finally came out. The receipt haunted me for days. I carried it everywhere, sometimes taking it out just to confirm that yes, this was real, not some paranoid delusion. Each time I looked at it, the words "romantic lakeside suite" cut deeper. But I didn't confront Vanessa. Not yet. You seem distracted, she said over dinner, 3 days after her return. Is everything okay at work? I forced a smile. Just a bug in the code I can't solve. You know how it is. She nodded sympathetically, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. The same hand that had likely caressed someone else just days before. I resisted the urge to pull away. You'll figure it out, she said. You always do. That night, after Vanessa fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and took my laptop to the living room. With trembling fingers I logged into our joint bank account, something I rarely did since Vanessa handled most of our finances, claiming it played to her consulting strengths. What I found made my stomach drop. Regular transfers, ranging from $2,000 to $5,000, had been leaving our account every few weeks for the past 8 months. Each was labeled with vague descriptions: consulting reimbursement, emergency fund, investment opportunity. I'd never questioned these transactions. Why would I? We maintained separate personal accounts alongside our joint savings, and I trusted Vanessa implicitly. She was the financially savvy one, after all. But now, with suspicion as my guide, I dug deeper. All the transfers went to the same account. An account I'd never seen before, not associated with any of our investments or expenses. I wrote down the account number and closed the laptop, a cold numbness spreading through my chest. The next day I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. As soon as Vanessa left for her office, I drove to our bank. I'm concerned about some unusual activity, I told the customer service representative, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. I'd like to trace where these transfers are going. Of course, Mr. Mitchell. Let me look into that for you. 20 minutes, and several forms later, I had a name. Lucas Devereaux. The name hit me like a physical blow. Lucas. Vanessa's ex-boyfriend, from before we met. The man she'd described as emotionally manipulative and financially irresponsible. The one she claimed to have cut all ties with years ago. Is there a problem, sir? The bank representative asked, noticing my expression. No, I managed. Just surprised. Thank you for your help. I drove home in a daze, memories replaying in my mind. Vanessa's stories about Lucas had painted him as a toxic force in her life, someone who had taken advantage of her generosity, who had nearly ruined her credit score, who had made her swear off dating for a year before she met me. He taught me what I don't want, she had told me, early in our relationship. And that helped me recognize what I do want when I found you. What a perfectly crafted lie that had been. Back home, I searched for Lucas online. His social media profiles were mostly private, but his LinkedIn revealed he now worked at a small marketing firm in Chicago. Chicago, where Vanessa traveled monthly for her intensive client meetings. Over the next week I created a spreadsheet of all the transfers. The total nearly knocked the wind out of me, $87,000. Almost our entire house down payment fund, gone. But money was just money. What really cut me to the core was the elaborate deception. While I'd been working overtime to contribute to our future, Vanessa had been systematically funneling our savings to a man she'd sworn was out of her life. I needed irrefutable proof before confronting her. So I made a call I never thought I'd make. Hamilton Investigations, a gruff voice answered. I need to hire a private investigator, I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I believe my wife is having an affair. Standard package is 3 days of surveillance, photo and video documentation, $2,500 flat fee, he recited, as if he'd said it 1,000 times before. Perhaps he had. She'll be in Chicago next week, I said. Wednesday through Friday. We can have someone on it. I'll need some details. I provided everything, her flight information, the hotel she claimed to be staying at, a recent photo. I even gave him Lucas's address, which I'd paid $50 to obtain from an online background check service. One more thing, the investigator said before hanging up. Prepare yourself for what we might find. Sometimes it's better not knowing. But I was past that point. The foundation of my marriage had already crumbled. Now I just needed to see exactly how deep the destruction went. As I ended the call, Vanessa texted me, running late at the office. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. I stared at the heart emoji and wondered how someone could lie so effortlessly. How the woman I shared my bed with, my life with, my dreams with, could betray me so completely. In just 1 week, I would have all the answers. But deep down I already knew the truth. The question now was, what would I do with it? The next 7 days crawled by at an excruciating pace. I went through the motions of normalcy, working, eating, sleeping beside Vanessa, all while carrying the weight of what I'd discovered. Each kiss goodbye felt like a mockery. Each I love you text exchange, a cruel joke. Vanessa left for Chicago on Wednesday morning. I drove her to the airport, watched her check her bag, and kissed her at the security checkpoint. I'll miss you, she said, adjusting the strap of her laptop bag. These trips are getting harder each time. Maybe they'll end soon, I replied, wondering if she caught the double meaning in my words. I hope so. She squeezed my hand. I'll call you when I land. I nodded, studying her face one last time, the face I thought I knew better than my own. Was there guilt hidden behind those eyes? Remorse? Or just the calculated calm of someone who had mastered the art of deception? Back home, I paced the empty house, checking my phone obsessively. At 2:17 p.m., it finally rang. Mr. Mitchell? This is Derek Hamilton. My private investigator had made contact. I'm in position. Your wife's flight landed on time. She took a taxi, but not to the Marriott. Downtown, as you mentioned. His voice was matter-of-fact, devoid of judgment. She went to a residential building in Lincoln Park. Nice area, very expensive. My throat tightened. And she used her own key to enter. Looked very familiar with the place. Of course she did. This wasn't her first visit. There's something else, Derek continued. A man met her in the lobby. They embraced intimately. I have photos. I closed my eyes, the confirmation landing like a physical blow, even though I'd expected it. Lucas? Matches the photo you provided, yes. I'll continue surveillance and report back. Over the next 2 days, Derek sent updates with clinical precision. Each one drove the knife deeper. 2:45 p.m. Subject and male companion having lunch at Café Soleil. Holding hands across table. 5:30 p.m. Shopping together at Northbridge Mall. He's carrying her bags. 9:10 p.m. Dinner at Riverview Restaurant. Window table, champagne ordered. These weren't just dry reports. Each came with photographic evidence. Images that seared themselves into my brain. Vanessa laughing over wine, her hand on Lucas's arm. The two of them walking along Lake Michigan, her head resting on his shoulder. Moments of intimacy that should have been exclusive to us, to our marriage, now shared with the very man she'd claimed to despise. On Friday morning, Derek called again. I've uncovered something you should know, he said, his professional tone tinged with what might have been sympathy. Your wife is renting this apartment under her maiden name, Vanessa Collins. Monthly rent is approximate, according to the doorman, who's quite chatty. She's been a part-time resident for about 9 months. 9 months? The timeline aligned perfectly with the beginning of the suspicious transfers. There's more, Derek continued. I showed the doorman a photo of your wife and this Lucas together, pretending to be an old friend. He mentioned they're planning a trip to Bali next month, said they were very excited about it and had been saving up for a while. Our 10th wedding anniversary was next month. We discussed celebrating somewhere special, but hadn't made concrete plans. Now I understood why Vanessa had been hesitant to commit to anything. I'm sending you a final report with all documentation, Derek said. Photos, timeline, everything. It'll be in your email within the hour. I thanked him mechanically and hung up. Then I sat in perfect stillness, staring at nothing, as the full picture of Vanessa's betrayal came into focus. While I had been planning our future, she had been building an entirely separate life complete with another home, another partner, and plans that didn't include me. The woman I thought I knew, the marriage I believed in, had been a carefully crafted illusion. When the email arrived, I forced myself to look at every photo, read every note. There was a particularly devastating image of Vanessa and Lucas on a rooftop restaurant. Clinking glasses, as the Chicago skyline glittered behind them. The timestamp showed it was taken Wednesday night, while I was at home texting her "I miss you" and receiving her lies in return. The final photo in the series showed them kissing goodbye outside the apartment building this morning. Vanessa was due to fly home to me in just a few hours. I printed one photo, the rooftop dinner, and placed it on the dining table. Then I opened a bottle of her favorite wine and began preparing dinner. I chopped vegetables with mechanical precision, marinated the steak she loved, and set the table with our wedding china. Tonight, when she returned with her stories of difficult clients and exhausting meetings, I would be waiting. The perfect husband, with the perfect meal, and the perfect evidence to shatter the perfect lie once and for all. I realized then that I hadn't just lost our savings or my trust in Vanessa. I had lost my entire reality, the future I'd planned, the memories I treasured, even the past we'd shared. All of it was now suspect, filtered through the lens of her deception. As I heard her key in the lock hours later, I straightened my shoulders and took a deep breath. The time for investigation was over. The moment of truth had arrived. "Adam! I'm home!" Vanessa's voice echoed through our apartment, cheerful and light, as if she hadn't just stepped off a plane from her other life. "In the dining room," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. I heard the soft thud of her suitcase being set down, the click of her heels against the hardwood floor. When she appeared in the doorway, her face lit up with practiced surprise. "What's all this?" she asked, taking in the candles, the wine, the carefully plated dinner. "Welcome home," I said, rising to pull out her chair. "I thought you might be hungry after your flight." She smiled that smile I once thought was just for me and settled into her seat. "You're too good to me." The client meetings were brutal this time. I poured her a glass of Cabernet, watching as she took appreciative sip. "Tell me about it," I said, sitting across from her. "How was Chicago?" And so she began her performance. The demanding client with impossible standards. The late-night strategy sessions. The hotel room service she'd barely touched because she was so stressed. Each lie flowed effortlessly, crafted with enough specific details to sound believable. I nodded, asked appropriate questions, played the role of attentive husband while a storm gathered inside me. I let her talk herself into a corner, constructing an elaborate fiction that I now knew piece by piece to be false. "Sounds exhausting," I said when she finally paused. "You deserve a break." "I really do," she sighed dramatically. "But it's worth it. Everything I do is for our future, Adam." The audacity nearly made me laugh, or scream. Instead, I reached beside me and withdrew the photo I'd printed earlier, sliding it across the table between our plates. "Is this part of our future too?" The change in her expression was instantaneous. The color drained from her face as she stared at the image of herself and Lucas. Champagne glasses raised in a toast against the Chicago skyline. I can explain," she stammered, her voice suddenly small. "I'm all ears." I took a deliberate sip of wine, surprised by my own composure. "Please, explain how you've been living a double life for the past 9 months. Explain how $87,000 of our savings went to finance your apartment with Lucas. Explain how you could look me in the eye every day and lie." "It's not what you think," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "No? Because I think you've been transferring our money to your ex-boyfriend. I think you've been pretending to go on business trips while actually playing house in Chicago. I think you've been planning a vacation to Bali with him next month on our anniversary." My voice remained low. "What part am I getting wrong, Vanessa?" Her tears spilled over now, mascara creating dark tracks down her cheeks. "I never meant for this to happen. Lucas reached out last year. He was in trouble, financial trouble. He just needed a loan." "A loan," I repeated flatly. "Almost $90,000 worth of loans." "It started that way," she insisted, "but then, things got complicated. We started talking more, and feelings resurfaced. And you decided to maintain 2 relationships instead of choosing one? How convenient. She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back as if her touch might burn me. You lied to me for months, I said, the words like acid on my tongue. You built another life with a man you said was a monster. It wasn't like that, she pleaded. You and I have security, stability. With Lucas, it's passion and history. Stop, the single word cut through her excuses. You don't get to justify this. Adam, please. Her voice broke. I still have feelings for you. I still love you, I couldn't figure out how to leave either of you. The absurdity of her statement hung in the air between us. She wasn't trapped. She was greedy, unwilling to give up the comfortable life we built together, yet unwilling to resist whatever Lucas offered her. I expected to feel rage in this moment. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. I looked at the woman across from me, really looked at her, and realized I no longer recognized her. The Vanessa I loved had been a fiction, a character she played to keep me providing the lifestyle she enjoyed while she pursued her real desires elsewhere. I filed for separation, I said quietly. The papers are in my office. You'll be served officially tomorrow. Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. We need to talk about this to work through it. There's nothing to work through? You made your choice 9 months ago. You just didn't have the decency to let me make mine. What about our home? Our future? Her voice had turned desperate now. We can go to counseling. I'll break it off with Lucas. I'll do anything. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things or make threats. I simply stood up, my dinner untouched. Don't worry about leaving, I said. I'll be staying with James tonight. Take the time to pack what you need. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, panic rising in her voice. I hear you have a lovely apartment in Lincoln Park. Under your maiden name, if I'm not mistaken. The shock on her face confirmed she never expected me to discover the full extent of her deception. Adam, wait. But I was already walking away, my mind shifting to the next phase of my plan. By morning, every financial tie between us would be severed. Every account emptied. Every credit card cancelled. She had chosen to live a double life. Now she would have to choose which one to continue, but without the support of my income or our shared resources. As I closed the door behind me, I heard her begin to sob. Once that sound would have broken my heart. Now, it barely registered. The perfect lie had finally crumbled, and from its ruins, I would build something new, a life based on truth, even if I had to build it alone. James's spare bedroom became my sanctuary that night. The digital glow of my laptop illuminated the darkened room as I methodically dismantled the financial life Vanessa and I had built together. You sure about this? James asked, leaning against the doorframe with a concerned expression. He'd listened patiently as I'd explained everything, his initial disbelief giving way to quiet anger on my behalf. Never been more sure of anything, I replied, fingers tapping away at the keyboard. First, I transferred every remaining cent from our joint accounts into a new account at a different bank, one Vanessa had no relationship with. Next, I canceled all joint credit cards, sending explicit notices to the companies that I would not be responsible for any new charges. Finally, I froze her access to our investment portfolio and retirement accounts. By 3 a.m. it was done. Vanessa's financial lifeline to me had been severed completely. My phone had been buzzing incessantly with her calls and texts. I finally turned it off, unable to stomach any more of her desperate pleas and justifications. Whatever emotional breakdown she was having would have to happen without an audience. Sleep eluded me. I lay awake watching shadows move across an unfamiliar ceiling, mentally calculating the cost of starting over. The financial loss was substantial, nearly half of our life savings gone, but not insurmountable. The emotional toll, however, felt incalculable. Morning arrived with cruel brightness. I turned my phone back on to find 47 missed calls and 31 text messages from Vanessa. I scrolled through them dispassionately. Please call me. We need to talk. Adam, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I love you. Lucas was just a distraction. I'll do anything to fix this. Anything. Why are all the cards declined? I can't even buy groceries. Did you empty our accounts? That's our money. This isn't legal. You can't just take everything. Answer your phone. The progression from contrition to panic to anger was exactly what I'd expected. The final message had come just 20 minutes ago. Lucas is gone. He won't answer my calls. I need you, Adam, please. Of course, Lucas had vanished. Men like him always did when the money dried up. I deleted all the messages without responding and headed to my lawyer's office. Everything is in order, Diane Shepard said, sliding the divorce papers across her desk. Given the circumstances and documentation, we're pursuing divorce on grounds of adultery and financial fraud. The transfers to this Lucas person will be particularly damning in court. And the timeline? I asked. Fast-tracked, 4 to 6 months at most. I've already filed a motion to freeze any remaining joint assets. She won't be able to liquidate anything without court approval. I nodded, a hollow victory settling in my chest. One more thing, Diane added, her professional demeanor softening slightly. She'll be served the papers this afternoon. Expect volatility. I thanked her and walked out into the bright spring day, feeling oddly disconnected from the world around me. People hurried past, wrapped in their own lives, unaware that mine had just imploded. How strange to experience catastrophe in broad daylight. When I arrived at our condo to collect more of my belongings, I found the door unlocked. Inside, chaos reigned, drawers pulled out, closets emptied, furniture askew. Vanessa had clearly been searching for any hidden cash or valuables. On the dining table where we'd had our confrontation just hours before, she'd left a handwritten note. "You've ruined everything. I hope you're satisfied." The bitter irony was almost laughable. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, then efficiently packed what I needed, knowing I'd return later with movers for the rest. As I was leaving, the elevator door opened to reveal a courier holding legal documents. "Vanessa Mitchell?" he asked. "She's not here," I replied, "but I'm her husband. I can take those." He checked his instructions, then shrugged and handed me the envelope. "Consider her served, then." I placed the divorce papers on the kitchen counter where she'd be sure to find them, then closed the door on what had once been our home. The next few days passed in a blur of practical arrangements and legal consultations. I rented a furnished apartment across town, filed change of address forms, and notified my workplace of my new contact information. I moved through these tasks with robotic efficiency, focusing on the logistics to avoid confronting the emotional devastation. Vanessa's attempts at contact grew increasingly desperate. She showed up at my office, only to be turned away by security. She sent tearful voice messages claiming Lucas had used her, had manipulated her emotions, had promised her a future he never intended to deliver. "He took everything I gave him and disappeared," she sobbed in one message. "You were right about him all along. Please, Adam. I made a terrible mistake." Her words confirmed what I'd already suspected. Lucas had played her just as she had played me, the perfect symmetry of betrayal. When she finally reached me through James's phone, I listened in silence to her pleas for reconciliation. "We can start over," she insisted, her voice raw from crying. "I'll get therapy. I'll be transparent about everything. You're the only real thing in my life, Adam. The only person who truly loved me." I let her finish, then spoke just once before ending the call. "You used me like a bank account with a wedding ring, and now that the funds are dry, so is your love." The line went dead, and with it the last connection to the woman I had once believed would be my forever. What remained was not anger or even hatred, just a vast emptiness where love had been. I would rebuild from the ashes of this betrayal, but I would do it alone, with the hard-won wisdom that sometimes, cutting someone off completely is the only path to freedom. 1 year, that's how long it took to fully extract myself from the wreckage of my marriage to Vanessa. The divorce was finalized more quickly than expected. 4 months after that fateful night, when I discovered her hotel receipt. The judge had been unmoved by Vanessa's tearful testimony, particularly after seeing the financial records and private investigator's report. In the end, she received nothing beyond her personal possessions and the car that was already in her name. "You've been remarkably composed throughout this process," my lawyer Diane said after the final hearing. "Most clients in your position would have been out for blood. Revenge requires emotional investment," I replied. "And I don't have any emotions left to invest in Vanessa." That wasn't entirely true. There were moments when grief would ambush me, watching a couple holding hands in a cafe, hearing a song that had once been ours, catching the scent of her perfume on a passing stranger. Each time I would acknowledge the pain, then deliberately let it go. Moving forward was a choice I made every day. The condo sold within 2 weeks of listing, well above asking price. I split the proceeds with Vanessa as required by the settlement, then used my share as a down payment on a small house in Portland, a city I'd always liked but had never visited with her. There was something cleansing about building a life in a place that held no memories of our marriage. My tech skills transferred easily to a new job at a growing startup. The work was challenging, the team welcoming. Slowly I built a new routine. Morning runs along the river, weekend hikes in the mountains, evening cooking classes, where I learned to make meals for one without feeling pathetic about it. Occasionally news of Vanessa would reach me through mutual friends, though I never asked for updates. I learned she'd been forced to take a second job after being passed over for partnership at her firm. Apparently fabricating business trips had consequences for her career. She'd moved into a small apartment across town from our former home. Lucas had indeed vanished, taking with him not only the money she'd siphoned from our accounts, but also jewelry and other valuables she'd kept at their Chicago love nest. There was a certain poetic justice in it all, though I took no pleasure in her downfall. Whatever karma had come for Vanessa wasn't my doing. She had engineered her own fate with every deceptive choice. 6 months after the divorce, James visited me in Portland. We hiked up to a viewpoint overlooking the city, the mountains rising majestically in the distance. "She asked about you," he said, as we rested on a bench. "Vanessa, I ran into her at the grocery store last week. What did you tell her?" I kept my voice neutral, my eyes on the horizon. "That you were doing well, that you'd moved away." He hesitated. "She seemed different, humbled. Maybe. Said she was seeing a therapist." I nodded, unsurprised. "Good for her." "That's it? Good for her?" James looked at me searchingly. "After everything she put you through?" I considered the question, feeling the cool mountain air fill my lungs. "What else is there to say? I hope she figures her life out. I hope she becomes a better person. It just doesn't have anything to do with me anymore." James shook his head with a low whistle. "I don't know if I could be that forgiving." "It's not forgiveness," I corrected him. "It's indifference. There's a difference." But as time passed, even the indifference mellowed into something less rigid. I began dating again, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. I learned to trust my instincts, to recognize red flags I'd once been blind to. Each relationship, whether it lasted 3 dates or 3 months, taught me something valuable about myself and what I wanted from a partner. On the 1-year anniversary of finding that hotel receipt, I sat on my back deck with a glass of whiskey, watching the sun set behind Douglas firs. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "It's Vanessa. I know it's been a long time. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. Not asking for forgiveness. Just needed you to know. I hope you're well." I read it twice, feeling oddly detached, as if reading about characters in a novel rather than my own life. After a moment's consideration, I deleted the message without responding. There was nothing left to say. Some people might call my response cold, unforgiving. But they hadn't lived through the systematic betrayal that had shattered my reality. They hadn't experienced the vertigo of discovering that the person sharing their bed, their dreams, their future, had been living a double life. The clean break I'd made wasn't about punishment. It was about survival, about refusing to remain tethered to someone who had viewed my love as a resource to be exploited rather than a gift to be treasured. Some nights I still wonder if Vanessa ever truly grasped what she lost. Not just the financial security or the comfortable lifestyle, but the genuine love I had offered her. A love without conditions or deceptions. As for me, I don't miss her. I don't hate her. I don't even think about her very often anymore. I simply cut her off completely, severing every tie that once bound us together. And that, I've learned, was the true beginning of healing. The moment I stopped defining myself as a betrayed husband, and started seeing myself as simply a man, imperfect, resilient, free. In the end, the most valuable lesson from my failed marriage wasn't about trust or betrayal. It was about the power of walking away, of recognizing when a story has reached its conclusion, of closing the book firmly, placing it on the shelf, and turning toward a new chapter written entirely in your own hand. An honest life, finally. My own.